Good morning. For the past several months, I've been working on creating proofs for mathematical theorems about harmonic astrology. Harmonic astrology is a very mathematical form of astrology. Its basis is very mathematical in nature, and there are rules that harmonic astrologers and vibrational astrologers use for calculating these charts, but I have never seen formal proofs of these rules. And so I decided I should uh, do that. Someone has to provide formal proofs for the various rules that are used in harmonic astrology. And in doing so, you discover new theorems, new results, which harmonic astrologers might not be aware of. And you gradually create a mathematical model that leads to a deeper understanding of harmonic astrology and allows you to see relationships that others may not have seen. So, what I'm doing here, I took all these results I have obtained so far, I narrowed it down to a list of essential theorems for harmonic astrology. And now, in addition to the paper I'm working on, a very lengthy paper, I thought it would be good to create a series of PowerPoints in which I explain my proofs just as I would to a mathematics class, to students taking a class from me in a particular branch of mathematics. Uh, and for many, that will make it easier to understand the proofs. Now, I know that a lot of people who might watch this uh, are probably not going to be mathematicians. And that is going to make it more difficult to understand the mathematical proofs. Well, I have two things I can say that you might like. Even if you don't understand the proofs, try and understand what the theorems are saying and follow the examples. That will give you a good sense of how harmonic astrology works and what the structure of harmonic astrology is. The second thing you should be aware of is even professional mathematicians like myself, uh, usually we can't read through proofs nearly as quickly as we can read through a book. It takes us time and effort to figure it out also. So we're often in the same boat as you. Okay, well, uh, hopefully by breaking up my paper into a series of smaller, more easily digestible PowerPoint presentations, that will be beneficial for everyone. All right, well, let's see if I can share my screen and we can get started with part one of this series. Okay, it's going to take me just a minute here to get everything set. I've got to get rid of some panels so I can see what I'm doing. That's just going to take a few more seconds or minutes, hopefully not hours. Ah, and now I think we're ready. So the title for this series is Essential Theorems for Harmonic Astrology. And this is part one. And the first series of presentations I do, they're all going to be quantitative. They're all going to be about mathematics and mathematical proofs. Later, I will add some qualitative uh, slideshows that will focus on uh, interpretation of harmonics. So this first one is part one, quantitative, the fractal nature of harmonics. Now, harmonic astrology began its development during the late 1950s, and the variant known as vibrational astrology was developed several decades later. But the roots of Both and Vedic astrology have been around for hundreds of years. During this time, many rules for both computation and interpretation have been developed, but the one thing that has frequently been lacking is a set of rigorous mathematical proofs of the essentials of this highly mathematical branch of astrology. At the very least, I haven't seen the proofs. If they're out there, I haven't seen them. Well, this is unfortunate as good mathematical models are often essential for a discipline to advance. Hence, in this work, we present proofs for several essential theorems that apply to harmonic astrology. And by doing so, we hope to bring more clarity to the underlying structure of the subject. The majority of this work is quantitative, but at the end, we will also engage in some qualitative speculation on the meanings of various harmonics. Okay, the fractal nature of harmonics. Now, one of the earliest examples of a fractal in mathematics, even though the concept wasn't formally identified until approximately 70 years later, is the Koch snowflake. This is a snowflake image that is generated by starting with an equilateral triangle, all three sides equal, and repeatedly replacing line segments by the same image over and over again. On the next slide is an illustration of how this begins and what the end result resembles. You start with an equilateral triangle and you keep replacing straight line segments by a curve that deviates from a straight line by drawing the top portion of a triangle over the middle third. This replacement procedure is then repeated ad infinitum, and the result is shown in the following illustration from Wikipedia. And here we see the Koch snowflake and how it's created. You start with this equilateral triangle, and you replace at each step in each iteration a straight line with a curve like this. You go out a third, do the top part of a triangle, and then you have the last third. So if I replace each of these line segments by this kind of curve, well, the straight line becomes this guy. And this straight line turns into this, and our last straight line segment becomes this. So now the equilateral triangle looks like a six-pointed Star of David. Well, what do we do now? We just repeat the process. I take each straight line segment in this figure and I replace it by one of these guys. So instead of going straight from here to here, now I go a third of the way, I do my top part of the triangle and do the remaining third. And then this next straight line segment gets replaced by the same thing. I go out a third, go up, down, and then the remaining third. And I do that going all the way around, and now it's starting to look more like a snowflake. Now for the next iteration, we do exactly the same. We take each of these straight line segments and replace it by something that looks like this. And here's the result. And we can do this over and over again. It's really starting to look like some kind of snowflake now, which is why it's called the Koch snowflake. Koch after the mathematician who came up with it, and snowflake because of what the image looks like. And so we can just keep going on an infinite number of times. And the end result, we never reach it, but you can see it's going to be a snowflake image with a boundary that has infinite detail and looks infinitely wiggly. If we had the end result, you could keep zooming in over and over again, and things would never just flatten out or look like a nice smooth curve. You're always going to have these little bumps at every level of magnification. Now, the reason we're beginning with the Koch snowflake is because harmonics in astrology are constructed in basically the same way. However, instead of replacing line segments with other curves, we're replacing angles such as 90 degrees or 180 degrees or 120 degrees with entire zodiacs. And if we keep doing this replacement ad infinitum, then we wind up creating an astrological fractal that is a counterpart to the Koch snowflake. Furthermore, the act of replacing our original angle by an entire zodiac adds additional nuance to the initial horoscope interpretation. So here's an example below. We usually have our horoscope or an astrological wheel divided up into 12 30-degree sections that we call the signs of the zodiac. If I take one of those signs, here I'm starting with Aries, what we're going to do now is replace that 30-degree segment, Aries, with an entire zodiac from Aries through Pisces. Okay, that's our first iteration. We can go down one more level, one more iteration. And once again, I could replace Aries by an entire zodiac from Aries to Pisces. I could replace Taurus with an entire zodiac from Aries through Pisces, and do that with each of these signs. And then you could continue doing that over and over again. So that is creating what I call an astrological fractal. The procedure for creating the final result, which again we never reach, it's exactly the same procedure being used to produce that fractal known as the Koch snowflake. Okay, now, as an example, if we divide any horoscope wheel into two halves, with the first half going from 0 degrees to 180 degrees, and the second half going from 180 degrees to 360 degrees, and if we replace each half by an entire zodiac from Aries through Pisces, then the question is, what position will a planet from the original horoscope occupy in one of these sub-zodiacs? The answer to this question can be found through simple proportions. For example, suppose that our angle in our initial horoscope is 120 degrees. That angle is 2/3 of the way through the interval from 0 degrees to 180 degrees. And so it must also be 2/3 of the way through the 360-degree zodiac we're replacing it with. Thus, we get the proportion 120 degrees is to 180 degrees as x is to 360 degrees, which implies that x is 240 degrees. Likewise, 300 degrees is 2/3 of the way through the interval from 180 degrees to 360 degrees. And so if we replace this interval with a 360-degree zodiac, then 300 degrees will correspond to 240 degrees in the 360-degree zodiac, since this is the point that is 2/3 of the way from 0 degrees to 360 degrees. Furthermore, since 180 degrees is equal to 360 degrees divided by 2, we call 180 degrees the root 2 harmonic angle, or root second harmonic angle. And the chart that is generated by replacing every important angle in our original horoscope by its corresponding angle from one of our two subzodiacs is called the 2 or second harmonic chart. Okay, now let me just do what I just said geometrically to make it a little easier to see. So to create a 2 harmonic chart, we first divide our zodiac wheel into 2 separate zodiacs as follows. So I'm beginning with this blank horoscope wheel. And now what I do is I take this interval from 0 degrees to 180 degrees, and I'm replacing that by an entire zodiac, right? So that means that my original sign of Aries is now comprised of 2 signs, Aries and Taurus. Aries makes up the first 15 degrees, Taurus the second 15 degrees. My original sign of Taurus now gets replaced by 2 signs, Gemini and Cancer. The first 15 degrees are Gemini, the second 15 degrees are Cancer. when I get up here to 0 degrees Capricorn, it's going to be replaced by 2 signs, and read this always from left to right. The first 15 degrees corresponds to Libra. The second 15 degrees corresponds to Scorpio. So the first 6 signs are replaced by one zodiac, and the last 6 signs are replaced by another zodiac. And I've color-coded everything to make it a little easier to see the 2 sub-zodiacs that I have put in here into my original zodiac wheel. Now, if we have a planet at 0 degrees Gemini, notice that 0 degrees Gemini, that is 60 degrees from 0 degrees Aries in our natal chart. What we now want to know is what will its position be in our 2 harmonic, our second harmonic, the sub-zodiac that we put in here. Well, without setting up any proportions or doing any computations with mathematics, you can just visually see the result. 0 degrees Gemini in our sub-zodiac, it corresponds to 0 degrees of Leo, right? Because Gemini in the sub-zodiac, we have Gemini in the original zodiac, but in our sub-zodiac, that point begins with Leo followed by Virgo. So 0 degrees Gemini in the second harmonic corresponds to 0 degrees Leo. Now observe that if I take the 60 degrees here, the 60-degree arc, multiply by 2, that gives me 120 degrees, which is equal to 0 degrees Leo. Okay, now that's something which is going to happen regularly. As you'll see, we'll often be able to mathematically compute the degree position in our harmonic chart just by multiplying our original angle by the harmonic we're interested in this case, the second harmonic. And in a later video, we'll prove that as a theorem. Okay, let's suppose we have a planet at 0 degrees Capricorn up here. That is going to be 270 degrees from 0 degrees Aries in our natal chart. What will its position be in the 2 harmonic, our sub-zodiac? Well, again, you can just look at it and read it off. 0 degrees Capricorn, our original chart, is going to correspond to 0 degrees Libra in our second harmonic chart. And once more, if you multiply 270 degrees by 2, that's going to give you 540 degrees. And now I have something here that looks sort of like an equal sign, but I've got 3 parallel bars, and we'll read that not as equal to, but as equivalent to. What do I mean when I say 540 degrees is equivalent to 180 degrees? Well, what I'm doing is clock arithmetic. The only difference is that our clock, instead of ending at 12, it ends at 360 degrees. So for 540 degrees, if I go first around 360 degrees, that's when the clock starts over at 0. And then to get to 540, I have to add another 180 to 360. And so continue on another 180 degrees, and that is going to be 0 degrees Libra. So we say that 0 degrees Capricorn in the second or 2 harmonic chart is going to be 108 degrees away from the start of Aries, and that takes us to, again, 0 degrees Libra. Okay, now, as I've alluded to find the position of a natal planet in the 2 harmonic, it appears that all we need to do is to multiply the natal position from 0 degrees Aries by 2, and then express the result as an angle between 0 and 360 degrees using what many of you know as clock arithmetic. In mathematics, we call this modular arithmetic. And mathematically, we would say 540 degrees modulo 360 degrees is equal to 180 degrees. So I'll use that terminology more later, but for now, I'll just call this clock arithmetic. That term is probably familiar to more people. We have a 360-degree clock, and whenever we reach 360 degrees, we start over at 0 degrees Aries. And that allows us to say that 540 degrees is equivalent to 180 degrees, which is the same as 0 degrees of Libra. Okay. Let's see. Thus, 0 degrees, let me go back one. Yep, I'm in the right place. Thus, 0 degrees Taurus, which is 30 degrees, is changed to 0 degrees Gemini by multiplying by 2. You multiply 30 by 2, you get 60 degrees, and that would be its position in the 2 or second harmonic chart. 0 degrees Capricorn is changed to 0 degrees Libra. And up here, 0 degrees of Aquarius. Well, let's see. Aquarius is 300 degrees away from 0 Aries. Just looking at things geometrically up here, it looks like in the second or 2 harmonic chart, 0 degrees Aquarius should be transformed into 0 degrees Sagittarius. And sure enough, if I multiply 300 degrees by 2, that gives me 600 degrees. If you subtract 360 degrees from the 600 degrees, you're going to get 240 degrees. So 600 degrees is equivalent to 240 degrees in our second harmonic, and 240 degrees, that is going to correspond to 0 degrees Sagittarius. Okay, now to get this value of 240 degrees, there's actually 2 ways to do it. You could just keep subtracting off 360 degrees from whatever this number is until you get something in between 0 and 360. Or you could divide 360 degrees into 600. That will go in there once, and then you get a remainder of 240 degrees. You'll get the same result either way that you do it. Now, to create a 3 harmonic chart, we divide our zodiac into 3 parts. And again, I've color-coded things to make it look easy. So our original zodiac wheel is divided into 3 parts. And I have a complete zodiac going through the first 4 signs, another complete zodiac going through the second 4 signs, and a third complete zodiac going through the remaining 4 signs. And each sign now corresponds to 3 signs, 3 consecutive signs in our third harmonic. Okay, and in the third harmonic, well, let's see, our original sign of Aries. We have the first 10 degrees of that corresponding to Aries, the second 10 degrees corresponding to Taurus, the third 10 degrees corresponding to Gemini in our third harmonic. So again, to create a 3 harmonic chart, we divide our zodiac into 3 parts and then replace each part with a complete subzodiac. And we now ask the same questions as before. If we have a planet at 0 degrees Gemini in our natal chart, what will its position be in the 3 harmonic chart? Well, visually, we could look at it, and it looks like 0 degrees Gemini in our original chart is going to correspond to 0 degrees Libra in the third harmonic chart. And we can get that numerically by just multiplying 60 degrees by 3. That gives us 180 degrees, which corresponds to 0 degrees Libra. Okay, if we have a planet at 0 degrees Capricorn in our initial chart, what will be its position in the 3 harmonic? Well, we can look at it. 0 degrees Capricorn, it looks like that's going to correspond to 0 degrees Cancer, right? But again, we can use this rule where we take the distance from the start of Aries to the beginning of Capricorn. That's going to be 270 degrees. Multiply that by 3, you get 810 degrees. Divide this by 360, you get a remainder of 90 degrees. So in the 3rd harmonic, 810 degrees is going to be equivalent to 90 degrees, which is 0 degrees Cancer. Okay, and it looks like that is it. So let me stop sharing my screen here. And I'm back. So that is, I have a towel behind my head that keeps appearing. So that is going to be the end of this first video, which hopefully will give you an idea of what a harmonic is, how harmonics are really astrological fractals, and how we can easily compute harmonics by hand, both numerically or even visually by putting all those subzodiacs into our zodiac wheel. Now, for most people these days, most of you will have access to sophisticated astrological software, and your software will more likely than not have the capability of computing various harmonics at the press of a button. So that makes it very easy to compute these harmonics. But it's also important to know the mathematical foundation behind it. It's important to understand what's actually going on when you're computing a harmonic. Okay, well, that's the end of part 1. I hope you join me later for part 2. And for now, I'll just say so long and be well.